There's a moment in certain conversations where logic quietly steps out of the room, not dramatically, not with a slam of the door, but almost politely, almost unnoticed. And in its place, something else takes over, something heavier, something more personal, something driven by feeling rather than reasoning. And that's the space I keep thinking about when I revisit All in the Family, especially in those episodes where you can actually feel that shift happening in real time, where a discussion that begins with ideas slowly becomes something much more emotional, much more raw, without anyone fully realizing when it changed. I keep going back to this one kind of scenario the show handles so well, where the conversation begins around something that sounds like it should be straightforward. Something like whether Gloria should make a decision about her own future without asking for approval, maybe taking a job opportunity, or making a financial choice that challenges Archie's sense of control over the household. And it starts with words that feel calm, almost careful, like everyone is trying to stay within the boundaries of reason. Gloria introduces the idea in a way that feels measured, like she's thought it through, like she's prepared to explain it. And there's a quiet confidence in her tone that suggests she's not just asking. She's stating something about herself, something about what she wants. Archie hears it, and at first, his response is surprisingly contained, almost like he's giving himself a moment to process, to frame his reaction in a way that sounds reasonable. And you can hear that effort, that attempt to keep things logical, to keep things within a structure he understands. As always, moves gently through the space, offering small supportive comments, trying to keep the tone soft, trying to maintain a sense of harmony. And for a brief moment, it feels like the conversation might stay balanced, like it might remain in that space where people can exchange ideas without losing control. Mike steps in as well, adding his perspective, and he does it in that familiar way, calm, articulate, grounded in principles that feel clear to him. And for a while, it actually sounds like a discussion, like a real attempt to understand different viewpoints. But then something shifts, and it's not loud, it's not sudden, it's just a slight change in tone, a slight tightening in the way Archie responds, a slight edge in the way Mike counters, and you can feel it, that moment where logic starts to lose its hold. Because for Archie, this isn't just about a decision. It's about authority, about respect, about what it means to be the head of a household, and those ideas aren't purely logical. They're emotional, they're tied to identity, to pride, to a sense of order that he believes is being challenged. And for Gloria, this isn't just about a practical choice. It's about independence, about being seen as capable, about stepping into a version of herself that isn't defined by someone else's expectations, and that carries its own emotional weight. Mike, too, is invested, not just intellectually, but personally because he sees the situation as part of a larger pattern, something connected to fairness, to progress, to the idea that people should have the freedom to make their own decisions. And that belief isn't just logical, it's deeply felt. So the conversation continues. But now it's different. Now it's less about exchanging ideas and more about defending positions, more about expressing feelings that are layered beneath the surface of the words. Archie starts to repeat himself, not because he lacks new points, but because the repetition reinforces his stance, it gives him a sense of control. It allows him to hold onto his perspective even as it's being challenged. Mike responds with more intensity, not louder necessarily, but more insistent, more focused on making his point clear. And in doing so, he adds to the pressure, even if that's not his intention. Gloria becomes more emotional, her voice carrying more urgency, more frustration, because she's no longer just discussing an idea. She's defending her right to make that choice. And that shift changes everything. Tries to soften the edges, tries to bring the conversation back to a place of understanding. But even her kindness starts to feel like it's being pulled into the tension, like it's not enough to counterbalance what's happening. And that's where the show becomes something really unique, because it doesn't rush to resolve this shift. It lets it play out. It lets the emotions take over. It lets the logic fade into the background while the characters navigate what they're feeling rather than what they're thinking. The living room setting amplifies all of this, because there's no escape, no distraction, no way to step away from the conversation. It's all contained in that one space, that one shared environment where every word lands a little heavier. You can feel the discomfort building, not in explosive bursts, but in layers, each response adding something, each reaction deepening the emotional stakes, until the original topic almost disappears, replaced by something much more personal. And yet, it's still funny in that very specific way the show manages, where the humor doesn't come from jokes in the traditional sense, but from recognition, from seeing how people behave when they're caught in these emotional moments. You might smile at the way Archie insists on his point, at the way Mike refuses to back down, at the way tries to keep everyone connected. But that smile is mixed with something else, something that acknowledges the tension, that recognizes the discomfort. This was part of what made the show so groundbreaking, especially in the context of the 1970s, because it brought these kinds of emotionally charged conversations into the open, into a format that audiences engaged with regularly, and it didn't simplify them. It didn't offer easy answers. Archie's worldview drives the conflict, not just because of what he believes, but because of how deeply he feels it, how it shapes his reactions, how it influences the way he hears everything that's being said. Mike and Gloria challenge those ideas, not just with logic, but with their own emotions, their own convictions, and that combination creates a kind of tension that feels very real, very immediate. It changes the tone in subtle ways, offering moments of softness, moments of understanding, moments that remind everyone that there's still a relationship beneath the disagreement. And those moments matter, even if they don't resolve the conflict. As the conversation continues, the logic doesn't disappear completely, but it becomes secondary. It becomes something that's used to support emotional positions rather than guide the discussion. And that shift is what makes the scene so compelling. Because you can see it happening, you can feel it. You can recognize it from your own experiences. That moment when a conversation stops being about what's being said and starts being about what's being felt. By the time the episode begins to wind down, there's no clear resolution, no moment where everything clicks back into place. Instead, there's a kind of emotional exhaustion, a sense that everyone has reached their limit, that the conversation can't go any further. The room quiets, the voices soften, but the underlying feelings remain. They don't disappear. They just settle, becoming part of the atmosphere rather than something that needs to be addressed immediately. And that's such an honest way to end it, because it reflects how these moments often work in real life, how emotions can take over, how logic can fade, how conversations can end without resolution. Personally, I find that kind of storytelling incredibly powerful, because it doesn't pretend that everything can be solved with the right argument. It acknowledges that people are driven by more than just logic, that feelings play a huge role in how we understand and respond to the world. And that's why All in the Family still feels relevant today, because those dynamics haven't changed. People still have these conversations, still experience those shifts, still navigate that balance between logic and emotion. There's something almost reflective about the way the episode ends, the way it leaves you with that lingering sense of unresolved feeling, that awareness that nothing has been fully settled, but something important has been revealed. And maybe that's the point, not to resolve the conflict, but to show it, to let it exist, to allow the audience to sit with it, to think about it, to recognize it in their own lives. So the conversation fades, the room settles, and you're left with that quiet, that space where the emotions still linger, where the logic has stepped aside, and where the complexity of human interaction feels fully present.